you're going to do is you're going to establish a 100-meter long transect. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to have a trail or a road, and you're going to move off of that a little bit, and we'll give you instructions on all that, and you're going to establish your transect. Then you're going to put 10 sites, 10 quadrat sites on that transect, one every 10 meters. Okay? And what we're assuming for this entire class, or not class, but for this entire data gathering exercise, is that unless you choose to prove otherwise, your pace is a meter. Now, some are a little less, probably very few are a little more. So sort of depending on how short you are, kind of stretch it out a little bit. If you really want to get serious, which would be wonderful, go home, get yourself a tape measure, and I've done this many, many times, and sort of train yourself to a 1 meter pace, okay? And that's going to be how we lay everything out. So what you're going to do is you're going to, in the next, we hope, week or two, now that the federal government is back on track, before they potentially go off track, we are going to have Marti help us come up with a list of potential sites. You're each going to choose one. Joey is going to make sure that everybody is assigned properly. And then what you're going to do is you're going to establish your transect. Every 10 meters, you're going to plop down a little flag in the ground. You're going to put together a PVC 1 square meter grid. You're going to put it down in a predetermined way so that you can put it down next month in exactly the same place. You're going to make an inventory of the plants that are in there. You're going to move 10 meters. You're going to do it again. You're going to do that 10 times on your site. You're going to do that once a month. And you're going to do that for, we hope, a minimum of 6 months. If you can do it longer, that would be great. At each of your transect sites, you're also going to hang 3 insect sticky traps. Okay, now these are built for being pest traps. So if you've got termites or cockroaches or whatever, and you want to get rid of them. And what you're going to do is you're going to have in your tool bag, your kit bag, some string. You're going to tie a string up and you're going to hang it vertically, so you're going to find at the beginning, the middle, and the end of your transect, you're going to find the nearest standing tree or bush, and you're going to hang that vertically and leave it out for a month. So 3 per transect, beginning, middle, and end. And you're also going to put down a 1 square foot, roughly 1/3 of a meter, since we like to be metric in the scientific world, piece of plywood. And you're going to plop that down next to your sticky trap. And that piece of plywood is going to be something that you're going to use for us to be able to get a sample of terrestrial invertebrates, so slugs and snails, spiders, insects. And what you're going to do with that is you're just going to flip it over once a month. You're going to immediately take a picture with your cell phone of what's under it, and then you're going to put it back. We're going to have those labeled in such a way that we can keep track of them. And you're going to do that once a month for those 3 boards. The sticky traps are a little trickier. You're going to actually take down the sticky trap. You're going to put a piece of plastic that you took off the sticky trap back onto it, and you're going to label it. And then what we're going to do, perhaps some of you will help with this, is after we're done, we're going to get at least measurements of the length of all the flying insects that got stuck on the sticky traps. And that's going to give us some index of flying terrestrial food index that's available for birds, lizards, basically those 2 things. Okay? And we're going to see how those come in. And then
everyone get off the trail.
Okay,
Sorry
get
to
off the
interrupt
trail,
you.
yep. You're going to have to, and John and Marty are going to help us establish this, but what you're going to do is you're going to actually make a little field guide for yourself of the plants that are in your squares. So what you're going to do is you're going to put down your square, and you're going to say, okay, there's a plant. If you're like me, you'll have no idea what that plant is, but you will say, but I can see it's different from the plant next to it. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is you're going to go outside of your transect, and you're going to find the same one, and you're going to cut off a leaf or a couple of leaves from it, and you're going to tape that onto a card, and you're going to give it a name. You're going to call it Curly Leaf 1, or you're going to call it something. Okay? And then you forevermore, you're going to use that as the label for those plants. Okay, so you're sort of making a little local field guide. And, you know, sometimes there's going to be two species that you can't tell apart and you're going to combine them. That's okay. We're getting a rough estimate of what's out there and how they're coming back. These guys will talk to you more about that process. Okay, and then you'll do that once a month. Okay, and we will, and you'll also take an image with your cell phone of each of your 10 sites. Okay, and we'll manage those. You'll have a card in there that gives it a number and your name and your transect number. And so then we'll have an image of what's happening. We'll have your plant IDs for what's happening. We'll have flying insects. We'll have terrestrial invertebrates. And watch how those recover as a function of fire severity. You will also measure fire severity at each of your 10 sites. And John will show you how to do that. Okay, John and Marti. And that's the basics. We may get wildlife cameras. I think it would be fantastic if we could. We had a whole plan going with the National Park Service, but that's national, so that means that kind of got put on hold for the last 5 weeks. Hopefully we can recover that, and we can get some way, perhaps midway through this project, we can get some wildlife cameras out so that we can also get a handle on birds and mammals that are coming into your sites as we're tracking recovery with the other aspects of it. Okay? Yeah.
So there's actually an app for flower identification in Santa Monica Mountains, the Santa Monica Mountain
Okay.
Flower guide. It's like excellent.
Right.
I use it all the time.
Okay.
I'm back to show other people
Okay, and
about
we can share that. I'm sure Marty's up on that. Now remember, I mean, sometimes you're working with a single leaf that's that big. I don't know how the app works.
It'll be a little while before that's going to work.
Right, yeah. So we're not going to have flowers for quite a while.
But
We will have. But yeah, no, and the better we can do, the more we can do with that, the better. The more plant expertise we have, the better. Okay.
Brad, can you give us the cool, like, once this data is collected, like, what's the cool science that can come out of this?
Good point, Ezekiel. So what is the cool science that's going to come out of this? Well, to my mind, I mean, you get a fire like this, and even though it may not look like it right now, there's winners and losers in these fires. There's plants that recover and do better, but it takes time. There's plants that pop up right away that wouldn't have popped up if there weren't the fire. Sometimes that's relatively immediate. There's plants that die. There's changes in plant composition. And what we want to do, sort of leveraging, the power of all these people, is we want to get at a very local level. Who are those winners and losers, and how quickly do they recover, and how does that correlate with the food resources for the animals that are out there? I want to know what the little lizard is going to do out there when there's nothing to eat. And these lizards are going to be coming out of hibernation in the next month. And they can't go, I mean, if we say, oh, in a year, it's going to be great. Well, they're all going to starve to death in a year. So I want to know what those insects are doing right now, and I want to know how that relates at a very, very fine spatial scale to the severity of the fire. And it's, John and Marty and I were walking around, and the fire severity there is different than the fire severity there. And there has different patches that meter by meter are different. And we want to really correlate that at that very local level, because that's the level that wildlife and plants oftentimes work at, right? I mean, that's, you live or die based on whether or not there's food in the surrounding 100 meters around you, right? And so rather than just tying it in to a giant scale project of saying, you know, what was the fire intensity in 160,000 acres of the Santa Monica Mountains, we're getting it down to the level of granularity that's much more relevant to a lot of important biological questions in terms of recovery and impacts. And normally you can't do that, so it's hard. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of people to get a lot of transects and a lot of grids. Well, we've got a lot of people. And so that to me is the kind of key. You guys want to add anything?
Yeah,
to that?
I just add that one of the big issues today is global warming and what impact it's having on ecosystems. There's evidence that fire severity is going up because temperatures are going up, and we want to know, how does severity of the fire impact recovery, because that'll tell us a lot about what we should expect in terms of global warming impact.
Yep.
That's just one of the many questions. There's lots of things that we can answer with these sorts of data.
Yeah, and you know, you might think, oh, you know, we're just dripping with these kinds of data and these sorts of studies. I think we're not, at least not at this level.
We haven't saturated it, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
But one
yeah.
thing I'll point out is the three of us will put together a collection of maybe a half a dozen or more research papers. We can get all of them as PDFs, so we can send them out.
Yep.
And I've learned over the years, people have different ways of dealing with the literature. Some people immediately want to read that and find out what they're likely to see. Others may not be interested until they start seeing patterns, and they want to try and understand those patterns. But at any rate, we'll have literature sent out to you so that you all can get a feel for the sorts of research that's been done in the past, the types of questions that have been asked in the past, and perhaps it'll explain things as we're going along when you have questions.
Yep. Yep. And my goal, you know, I'm a research scientist. John is a research scientist. Marty, we all care about this research. And one of the things about scientific research is that, in a very real sense, research isn't done until it's made publicly available. And the way we normally do that is by publishing it. And so my very, very, great hope would be that we get all these data, and then, I'm kind of thinking over the summer into the fall of next year, we can analyze it enough that it doesn't just stay in our, folders on our computers, but we can turn it into a compilation, which either becomes a white paper that we publish, that we can at least put online, associated with the Kretz Center in the Santa Monica Mountains and the MRT, or ideally it goes into the peer-reviewed scientific literature, and we can share that and help build up the scientific literature of the sort that John's going to be sending out. So that's it in a nutshell. And the last thing I will say, so what we're going to do is we're going to, in just a minute, wander up here, and I'm going to sort of turn this over to John and Marty for our training. We're then going to come back down here, and